Hey guys, tonight we're traveling back to the year 541, to a Constantinople where the streets smell of incense, plague, and freshly polished radishes. That's right, we're diving into the bizarre world of the radish cult, where a simple root vegetable became the center of religious fervor during one of history's darkest hours. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, why not tell me in the comments what city you're listening from and what time it is there. I love imagining all of you in different time zones, getting ready for some weird history. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing that hits you isn't the sight, it's the smell. As you blink awake in this unfamiliar 6th century morning, your nose wrinkles at the competing scents of rotting fish from the harbor, the ever-present tang of human waste, and something else. Something earthy and sharp. Radishes. Lots of them. You're in the marketplace of Constantinople, but this isn't the bustling trade hub you've read about in history books. The Justinian plague has turned the great capital of the Byzantine Empire into a shadow of itself. People move like ghosts through the purple-tinged dawn, their faces covered with cloth against the miasma they believe carries disease. Then you see her, an old woman kneeling in the dirt, carefully polishing a fat, misshapen radish with a scrap of silk that might have once been part of a noblewoman's gown. She's whispering to it like it's a sleeping child, her fingers tracing its lumpy contours with reverence. "Beautiful, isn't she?" a voice murmurs in your ear. You turn to find a gaunt-faced man in a tattered tunic. That's one of the Blessed Ones, grew near the old oak outside the city walls. They say the Virgin herself watered it with her tears. As you watch, a group of men in threadbare robes approach the old woman, bowing before her radish like it's a holy relic. One produces a small knife and carefully shaves a sliver from the root, which the others divide among themselves with trembling hands. This is how you learn about the radish cult of Constantinople, not from history books, but from watching starving plague survivors treat common vegetables like sacred objects. In a city where half the population has died and the other half expects to join them soon, people will cling to any hope, no matter how strange. Historians still debate how it started. Some say it began with a single visionary who claimed radishes cured his plague symptoms. Others point to older agricultural cults that worshipped Demeter and Persephone. The truth is probably simpler: when you're starving and terrified, even a hard, bitter root can seem like a miracle. Here's something most history books won't tell you: the cult didn't just venerate radishes, they developed an entire taxonomy of holiness. Forked roots were considered especially sacred, representing the duality of Christ's nature. Particularly red radishes were believed to have protective powers against the plague. And woe betide anyone caught eating a blessed radish, that was considered worse than blasphemy. As you move through the marketplace, you see evidence everywhere. A merchant has set up an entire stall displaying radishes on velvet cushions. A street preacher waves a particularly gnarled specimen, declaring it proof of God's mercy. Even the city guards seem to be in on it. You watch one carefully move a basket of radishes out of the sun's reach, as though they were delicate flowers rather than hardy roots. Just when you're starting to think you've stepped into some kind of collective madness, a wiry hand grabs your elbow. An old man with breath that smells strongly of onions hisses in your ear, "Don't let them fool you, stranger. Those radish lovers are hiding something. Why do you think the plague only spares them?" And with that unsettling question hanging in the air, you realize this isn't just a strange coping mechanism, it's the beginning of something much darker. Because in a city ravaged by plague, fear can turn even the most innocent things dangerous. The scent of crushed olives hangs heavy in the air as you approach the abandoned press house. That sharp, peppery onion smell hits you again before you even see the speaker. It's the same old man from the marketplace, now leaning against a broken grinding stone like a general surveying his troops. "Took you long enough," Demetrius grumbles, wiping his hands on a stained tunic that might have been white in another lifetime. Around him, a dozen men and women cluster in the shadows, their faces obscured by scarves soaked in, you sniff cautiously, vinegar and garlic protection, Demetrius explains, noticing your expression. He tosses you a similar cloth. The onion's breath keeps the plague at bay. Unlike those radish-eating fools who think shiny roots can save them. As you tie the pungent scarf around your face, your eyes watering instantly, Demetrius unveils a makeshift map scratched into the dirt floor. The radish cult isn't just some peasant superstition, he whispers. They're stealing our crop's vitality. Every onion patch near their shrines withers within a week. Here's the historical nugget most scholars miss. The 6th century saw actual agricultural warfare in Constantinople's hinterlands. While Justinian fretted over Persian invasions, rural communities were engaged in their own holy war, onion growers versus radish devotees, with the occasional turnip neutralist caught in the crossfire. A woman in the corner brandishes what looks like a modified farming hoe. They've been sneaking into our fields at night, she hisses. Planting radishes among our onions like some kind of vegetable Trojan horse. Demetrius nods gravely and produces a small clay jar. When he removes the lid, the smell makes your vinegar scarf seem like a floral bouquet. Fermented onion paste, he says proudly. 3 months aged. We've been leaving pots of this near their gathering places. Let's see their precious radishes compete with this holy aroma. This is where history gets delightfully weird. Byzantine agricultural records mention unusual crop failures during the plague years, but none specify the cause. Could it have been onion-based chemical warfare? Modern botanists confirm alliums do release compounds that inhibit nearby plant growth, an accidental ancient herbicidal tactic. As the onion rebels detail their plans, which involve, among other things, smuggling garlic into the radish cult's sacred gardens, you notice a young boy nervously twisting what looks like a radish-shaped amulet in his hands. Demetrius follows your gaze and sighs. My grandson. The only one in our family who got sick was the one who traded his onion charm for one of their cursed radishes. The room falls silent. Outside, the call to evening prayers echoes through the streets, mingling with the ever-present wails of plague victims. In that moment, you realize this isn't just about vegetables, it's about people desperately trying to make sense of unimaginable suffering through the only frameworks they know. Just as you're about to ask how you fit into all this, a thunderous crash echoes from the street outside. Someone screams, the tax collectors are raiding the radish shrine. Demetrius's eyes light up with something between fury and triumph. Grab your jars, he commands his followers. The great vegetable war begins tonight. The vinegar-soaked scarf clings to your face as you follow Demetrius' onion rebels through Constantinople's labyrinthine alleys. The acrid smell should mask your presence, but now it feels like a beacon announcing your location to every stray dog and curious guard in the district. Keep up, city boy, Demetrius hisses as he ducks under a low archway. The rebels move with practiced ease through the darkness, their sandals making no sound on the worn stones. You're about to ask where exactly you're going when the ground suddenly disappears beneath your feet. Your stomach lurches as you drop into darkness, only to land with a splash in knee-deep water. As your eyes adjust, you realize you're standing in one of Constantinople's legendary cisterns, the massive underground reservoirs that keep the city alive during sieges. But this isn't the grand basilica cistern tourists will gawk at centuries later. This is something rougher, older, and currently lit by dozens of floating radishes. Yes, radishes. Hollowed-out roots bobbing in the water, each containing a tiny oil lamp that casts flickering shadows on the arched brick ceilings. The effect is equal parts beautiful and unsettling, like stars reflected in an underground sky. Heretics. Demetrius spits, splashing forward. They're using the emperor's water supply for their pagan rituals. Here's what historians know. Constantinople's underground cistern network stretched for miles, with many sections forgotten even in the 6th century. But what they don't mention is that these spaces became havens for all sorts of unofficial worship during the plague years, including, apparently, radish-based religions. As you wade deeper, the sound of chanting grows louder. Around a bend, you find the source, 24 people standing waist-deep in the cistern's waters, holding aloft radishes of various sizes while an elderly woman in soaked robes conducts what looks like a vegetable-based baptism. Behold the sacred geometry! The woman cries, holding up a radish that's split into 3 distinct lobes. As the root divides, so too does the Holy Trinity manifest in earthly form. Demetrius reaches into his pouch and pulls out a clove of garlic so potent it makes your eyes water from 3 feet away. Let's see how sacred they feel when their little lanterns start smelling like my grandmother's sandals, he mutters. But before the onion rebels can launch their aromatic assault, a new sound echoes through the cistern, the metallic clank of armor. Imperial guards! And they're coming this way fast. The elderly priestess snaps her fingers, and suddenly all the floating radish lamps are submerged, plunging the chamber into darkness. In the sudden blackness, you feel someone grab your arm. Come with me if you want to see the real secret, a voice whispers in your ear. It's not Demetrius. The hand pulling you away smells not of onions, but of earth and something sweet you can't quite place. That earthy sweet scent leads you through pitch-black water passages, your guide's surprisingly strong grip the only tether to reality. After what feels like an eternity of stumbling through calf-deep water, a faint purple glow appears ahead. The hand releases you as you emerge into paradise. Before you stretches an underground garden illuminated by hundreds of bioluminescent fungi clinging to the vaulted ceilings. But it's not the glowing mushrooms that steal your breath, it's the perfectly arranged rows of radishes growing in raised stone planters, each specimen larger and more vibrantly colored than anything you saw in the surface markets. Her Imperial Majesty's private sanctuary, your guide says, stepping into the light. She's younger than you expected, maybe 20, with calloused hands and dirt under her nails that suggests she's no mere courtier. I'm Sophia, head gardener to the Augusta. Here's the historical context you're missing. Empress Theodora maintained several secret gardens across Constantinople, though most histories focus on her rose gardens. Few mention this subterranean farm where, according to recently deciphered scrolls, she cultivated medicinal plants during the plague years. Sophia plucks a particularly plump radish from its bed and slices it open with a silver knife. Instead of the expected white flesh, the interior glows faintly purple. Infused with special nutrients, she says with a wink. The Augusta believes these may hold the key to resisting the plague. You're about to ask what kind of nutrients make vegetables glow when a rustling comes from behind a trellis. A small figure emerges clutching a basket, a girl no older than 8, her simple tunic at odds with the jeweled hairpin keeping her dark curls in place. My daughter, Sophia says, her voice suddenly tight. She helps with the harvest. The girl curtsies and offers you the basket. Inside rests a single perfect radish, its skin shimmering like amethyst. For protection, the child whispers. Then, with heartbreaking solemnity, don't tell the onion men. This moment captures the tragedy historians often overlook, how the plague turned even children into keepers of secrets. Recent archaeological finds suggest Theodora employed dozens of garden children to tend plants believed to ward off disease. Sophia guides you to a stone bench. The truth: both sides are fools. The onion growers waste their time fighting radish worshippers when they should be. Her words cut off as the distant sound of armor grows louder. She presses the glowing radish into your hands. Go. Tell Demetrius there's a third way. The Augusta's way. As guards' torches appear at the far end of the chamber, Sophia and her daughter melt into the garden's shadows, leaving you alone with a bioluminescent vegetable and far more questions than answers. The glowing radish pulses in your hands like a tiny heartbeat as you stumble through the cistern's gloom. Sophia's words echo in your mind, a third way. But between the onion rebels and radish fanatics, you're not sure Constantinople is ready for compromise. Emerging into moonlight near the old granaries, you nearly trip over a cluster of radishes arranged in a perfect circle. Each root has been carved with strange symbols that catch the pale light. Before you can examine them closer, a shadow detaches itself from a nearby doorway. Ah! The messenger returns. Demetrius steps forward, his vinegar-soaked scarf now supplemented with garlic garlands that make your eyes water. His rebels fan out behind him, clutching farming tools repurposed as weapons. What did the underground heretics tell you? You open your mouth to explain Sophia's message when a new voice cuts through the night. Demetrius. Enough of this foolishness. An elderly man in a stained scholar's robe pushes through the onion rebels. Professor Leo, you'll later learn, once Constantinople's foremost mathematician, now the unlikely leader of the city's turnip moderates. Put down those ridiculous onions and look. Leo gestures angrily at the arranged radishes. Can't you see the divine proportions, the Fibonacci sequence in the root clusters, the golden ratio in the leaf distribution? Here's a fascinating historical footnote. Byzantine scholars were secretly applying advanced mathematics to agriculture decades before the Arab scholars usually credited with these innovations. Recently discovered manuscripts show Leo wrote an entire treatise on the sacred geometry of vegetables that was later burned as heresy. Demetrius scowls. Numbers won't cure the plague, old man. Nor will stinking up the city. Leo retorts. He produces a turnip from his sleeve and balances it atop a nearby post. Behold! The middle way. Not too pungent like your onions, not too showy like their radishes. The perfect. A rock whizzes through the air, smashing the turnip to pulp. From a nearby rooftop, radish cultists shower the group with root vegetables. The Great Vegetable War of Constantinople has officially begun. As projectiles fly, you notice something odd. The glowing radish in your hand is pulsing faster. Sophia's words come back to you, the Augustus way. Maybe the answer isn't choosing sides, but finding what grows beneath them all. The glowing radish in your hand throbs urgently as the vegetable warfare erupts around you. A turnip whizzes past your ear, splattering against the granary wall with a wet smack. Radish cultists have taken up positions on nearby rooftops, raining down their sacred roots like biological artillery. To the forum. Professor Leo shouts, using his mathematical scrolls as an improvised shield. We must appeal to the emperor's reason. Demetrius and his onion rebels form a phalanx, their vinegar-soaked scarves now serving as both banner and chemical weapon. For the Allium Alliance. They chant, advancing through the projectile storm. You're swept along in the chaotic march toward the Augusteum, the glowing radish now your only light in the darkened streets. The scene that greets you at the forum would be comical if it weren't so desperate. Hundreds of citizens engaged in what future archaeologists will mistakenly classify as an unusual agricultural festival. Here's the historical pivot point most chroniclers miss. On this night in 542 AD, Emperor Justinian was secretly drafting what would become his infamous edict on vegetable-related heresies. A fragmentary scroll discovered in the Vatican archives reveals the emperor's personal scribbles in the margins. If they're so hungry, let them eat their damned radishes. As the mob reaches the bronze gates of the Great Palace, an imperial herald emerges holding a scroll still dripping with fresh ink. The crowd falls silent as he reads, "By order of His Most Divine Majesty, all unauthorized vegetable worship is hereby prohibited. Radish cults, onion brotherhoods, and turnip, whatever you call yourselves, disband immediately. Your produce is hereby confiscated for imperial stores." The uproar is instantaneous. Radish devotees wail like mourners at a funeral. Onion rebels shake their garlic braids in protest. Professor Leo simply sighs and begins recalculating his geometric proofs in the dirt. But the glowing radish in your hand grows warmer. As the crowd's anger builds, you notice Sophia's daughter slipping through the mob toward the palace's side entrance. She catches your eye and gestures urgently. The Augustus way. There's still one player in this game who hasn't shown her hand yet. As imperial guards begin rounding up vegetable worshippers, you make your choice, slipping away toward the child and whatever secret solution Theodora has cultivated in her underground gardens. The child's small hand slips into yours as she leads you through a hidden postern gate, the glowing radish in your other hand casting eerie purple shadows on the palace walls. The scent of crushed herbs grows stronger as you descend a spiral staircase, not the earthy pungency of Demetrius onions, but something fresher, greener. Mother says you're special, the girl whispers. You smell like the future. Before you can unpack that bizarre statement, you emerge into Theodora's secret greenhouse. The Empress herself stands amid hanging gardens of exotic plants, her famous beauty muted by fatigue, her silk gown swapped for a gardener's rough tunic. At her feet, wooden crates overflow with those peculiar glowing radishes. Ah, Theodora says without looking up from her pruning. The messenger from the vegetable wars. She snaps a leaf from a silvery plant and crushes it between her fingers. Tell me, did my husband's decree stop their squabbling? The historical record shows Theodora maintained extensive medicinal gardens, but newly translated texts suggest she was conducting what we'd now call clinical trials during the plague. Your sandals crunch on discarded clay tablets, each one recording dosages and outcomes for various plant-based remedies. Sophia emerges from behind a screen of vines, her arms full of scrolls. The radish worshippers were right about one thing, she says. There is power in roots. Just not the way they think. Theodora finally turns, holding up a vial of violet liquid. The glow comes from crushed firefly larvae, she admits. But the true medicine is in the soil. These radishes grew in graveyard earth. A chill runs down your spine. Modern science would confirm her accidental genius. The high calcium content in bone-rich soil does produce more nutrient-dense vegetables. The Empress had stumbled upon mineral supplementation centuries before its time. The little girl tugs your sleeve. We feed the sick ones, she explains solemnly. Not too much, or they glow in the dark forever. Theodora barks a laugh. The children make better healers than my physicians. They don't overthink things. She presses a cool hand to your forehead. You'll carry our message: the fighting must stop. The cure won't work unless they work together. As if on cue, distant shouts echo from above. The vegetable war has reached the palace steps. Theodora's gaze hardens. Go. And take this. She presses a small clay jar into your hands. Inside, a single seedling glows with soft golden light, neither radish nor onion, but something entirely new. The clay jar warms in your hands as you climb back toward the chaos above. Theodora's words still echo in your mind, neither radish nor onion, but something new. You pry open the lid just enough to peek inside, where a single sprout pulses with golden light, its leaves shimmering like hammered metal. The palace courtyard is in pandemonium. Imperial guards struggle to separate onion rebels from radish devotees, while Professor Leo's turnip moderates attempt and fail to mediate with geometric proofs drawn in the dirt. Demetrius has a radish cultist in a headlock, shouting about soil corruption, while a particularly fervent root worshipper waves a gilded radish like a holy relic, chanting, "The flesh is salvation." You raise the jar high, expecting, well, you're not sure what. A miracle, a ceasefire instead. The crowd barely glances at you until the little girl from the greenhouse darts past your legs and snatches the jar from your hands. Look! She shouts, her voice piercing the noise. She upends the jar, and the glowing seedling tumbles into the dirt. For a breath, nothing happens. Then, the earth shivers. Tiny golden tendrils erupt from the soil, spiraling up like living wire. The crowd stumbles back as the seedling grows at impossible speed, unfurling broad, metallic leaves in a stem that twists into intricate, geometric patterns. By the time it stops, a perfect, waist-high plant hums faintly in the center of the courtyard, its core pulsing like a heartbeat. Demetrius drops his opponent. What in Hades? The radish cultist falls to his knees. A sign. Professor Leo adjusts his spectacles, murmuring, "Fascinating. Fibonacci sequence in 3 dimensions. Here's the thing history forgot, Theodora didn't just cultivate medicine. She experimented with hybridization decades before the agricultural revolution. This plant, you realize, is something new. A fusion. A bridge." The little girl grins up at you. "It likes both," she whispers. "Onions and radishes. See, she plucks a single leaf and the scent hits you. Sharp, peppery onion at first, then the crisp, earthy sweetness of radish beneath. The crowd presses closer, their anger momentarily forgotten. Even the imperial guards lower their spears, staring. Then, a horn blares from the palace gates. The mob freezes. A voice booms, by order of the emperor. But the decree goes unfinished. Because the golden plant sings. A single, resonant note, like a plucked harp string, shivers through the air. The sound lingers, trembling in your ribs, and for the first time since you arrived in this plague-ridden city, there is silence. The little girl reaches out, touching the plant's stem. It splits open. Inside, nestled in glowing filaments, are dozens of tiny seeds, each one shimmering with that same impossible gold. Theodora's final gambit. Take them, the girl says, grinning. Plant them everywhere. The golden seeds scatter across Constantinople like sparks from a forge. You watch as the little girl presses them into the hands of onion rebels and radish devotees alike, her small fingers moving with surprising urgency. Demetrius stares at his seed like it might bite him, while the radish cultists debate whether to build it a shrine or eat it raw for spiritual enlightenment. Plant them, the girl insists, her voice carrying an eerie maturity. Before the guards. A shout cuts her off. Imperial troops are pushing through the crowd, their polished armor reflecting the golden plant's glow in distorted fragments. The captain's eyes widen as he takes in the impossible hybrid. Sorcery. He barks. Destroy it. Here's what the history scrolls omit. Justinian's forces weren't just cracking down on vegetable worship, they were systematically confiscating any plant that might challenge imperial grain monopolies. Recently uncovered tax records show special levies on non-standard crops. As the soldiers advance, Professor Leo makes a startling move. The old mathematician throws himself between the troops and the plant, his scrolls fluttering to the ground. "You fools!" he cries. "Don't you see this could feed the city?" One of the radish cultists, a burly farmer you recognize from the cistern ceremony, steps forward next. Then a vinegar-soaked onion rebel. Soon a human chain forms around the singing plant, their previous animosities forgotten in the golden light. The captain hesitates, his sword half drawn. This moment of indecision allows something extraordinary to happen. The little girl reaches up and plucks a single glowing seed pod from the plant. With a deep breath, she blows gently and the seeds scatter on the wind like dandelion fluff, catching in hair, cloaks, and the cracks between cobblestones. The captain snarls and lunges forward, but it's too late. The original plant begins to crumble, its metallic leaves flaking away like ancient parchment. As the last golden fragment dissolves into the soil, a new sound emerges, hundreds of tiny, harmonic vibrations coming from all directions. You turn to see sprouts pushing up between street stones, in window boxes, even through the mortar of the palace walls. The entire forum is coming alive with those shimmering leaves, each new plant emitting a soft, resonant hum. The imperial troops stumble back as the vibrations intensify, forming a strange, soothing melody. The crowd falls silent. Even Demetrius removes his pungent onion garland, his face slack with wonder. In that moment, you understand Theodora's true brilliance. This wasn't just about medicine or agriculture. It was about harmony. A living metaphor made manifest the warring factions of Constantinople, literally rooted in the same soil, nourished by the same light. The little girl slips her hand into yours again. "Listen," she whispers. And you do. The plants aren't just singing. They're teaching the city a new song. The humming grows louder as Constantinople's new golden garden takes root before your eyes. Tiny shoots emerge from the most improbable places between mosaic tiles in the forum, through cracks in merchant stalls, even sprouting from the worn leather of abandoned sandals. Each plant pulses in perfect harmony with the others, creating a living symphony that makes the very air vibrate. Demetrius kneels beside a cluster growing through the cobblestones, his calloused fingers hovering over the shimmering leaves. "It's Beautiful, he admits, the onion garlands around his neck suddenly seeming crude and unnecessary. Nearby, a radish cultist carefully transplants a seedling into her ceremonial headdress, tears streaking her face. Here's what future historians will debate: was this phenomenon truly botanical, or something more mystical? Modern scientists might suggest the plants emitted infrasound frequencies that affected human brainwaves. Theodora's personal journals recently discovered behind a false wall in the palace mention singing mushrooms from the Black Sea region that could calm troubled minds. The imperial captain lowers his sword, his stern expression softening as the harmonic vibrations wash over him. "This changes nothing," he mutters, but the words lack conviction. One of his younger soldiers has already removed his helmet to stare in wonder at a seedling growing through its bronze surface. You notice movement at the palace gates. Theodora stands silhouetted in the doorway, her simple gardener's tunic replaced by imperial purple. She doesn't speak. Doesn't need to. The message is clear in the way she cradles a single golden leaf against her palm like a mother holding a newborn's hand. Professor Leo, ever the scholar, begins taking measurements with his belt. Fascinating. The growth patterns form perfect Pythagorean ratios. His voice rises with excitement. The Empress has created a living mathematical model. As the plants continue their otherworldly chorus, something even more remarkable happens. The warring factions begin sharing seeds. An onion rebel hands a radish worshipper a clove of garlic. The radish worshipper reciprocates with a prized gilded root. The little girl moves between them, beaming, her pockets overflowing with glowing seeds. This moment of unity would become legendary, though later chroniclers would sanitize the story, removing the singing plants entirely. Only in marginalia of a few monastic texts do references remain to the golden harmony that stilled the vegetable wars. But you're witnessing the raw, unfiltered truth. The air itself seems to shimmer with possibility. Even the ever-present stench of plague-ridden Constantinople fades beneath the crisp, clean scent of growing things. Just as the moment reaches its peak, a new sound cuts through the harmony, a deep, resonant tolling from the Hagia Sophia. The crowd stills. That bell only rings for two reasons: imperial coronations or funerals. Theodora's head snaps up. Without a word, she turns and disappears into the palace, her purple robes fluttering behind her like a warning flag. The little girl's smile fades. She presses something into your hand, a single seed pod that glows warmer than all the others. "It's not over," she whispers. Then she's gone, darting after her empress, leaving you standing in a garden of miracles, with a growing sense that the true test is yet to come. The humming grows louder as Constantinople's new golden garden takes root before your eyes. Tiny shoots emerge from the most improbable places between mosaic tiles in the forum, through cracks in merchants' stalls, even sprouting from the worn leather of abandoned sandals. Each plant pulses in perfect harmony with the others, creating a living symphony that makes the very air vibrate. Demetrius kneels beside a cluster growing through the cobblestones, his calloused fingers hovering over the shimmering leaves. "It's beautiful," he admits, the onion garlands around his neck suddenly seeming crude and unnecessary. Nearby, a radish cultist carefully transplants a seedling into her ceremonial headdress, tears streaking her face. Here's what future historians will debate: was this phenomenon truly botanical, or something more mystical? Modern scientists might suggest the plants emitted infrasound frequencies that affected human brainwaves. Theodora's personal journals recently discovered behind a false wall in the palace mention singing mushrooms from the Black Sea region that could calm troubled minds. The imperial captain lowers his sword, his stern expression softening as the harmonic vibrations wash over him. "This changes nothing," he mutters, but the words lack conviction. One of his younger soldiers has already removed his helmet to stare in wonder at a seedling growing through its bronze surface. You notice movement at the palace gates. Theodora stands silhouetted in the doorway, her simple gardener's tunic replaced by imperial purple. She doesn't speak. Doesn't need to. The message is clear in the way she cradles a single golden leaf against her palm like a mother holding a newborn's hand. Professor Leo, ever the scholar, begins taking measurements with his belt. Fascinating. The growth patterns form perfect Pythagorean ratios. His voice rises with excitement. The Empress has created a living mathematical model. As the plants continue their otherworldly chorus, something even more remarkable happens. The warring factions begin sharing seeds. An onion rebel hands a radish worshipper a clove of garlic. The radish worshipper reciprocates with a prized gilded root. The little girl moves between them, beaming, her pockets overflowing with glowing seeds. This moment of unity would become legendary, though later chroniclers would sanitize the story, removing the singing plants entirely. Only in marginalia of a few monastic texts do references remain to the golden harmony that stilled the vegetable wars. But you're witnessing the raw, unfiltered truth. The air itself seems to shimmer with possibility. Even the ever-present stench of plague-ridden Constantinople fades beneath the crisp, clean scent of growing things. Just as the moment reaches its peak, a new sound cuts through the harmony, a deep, resonant tolling from the Hagia Sophia. The crowd stills. That bell only rings for two reasons: imperial coronations or funerals. Theodora's head snaps up. Without a word, she turns and disappears into the palace, her purple robes fluttering behind her like a warning flag. The little girl's smile fades. She presses something into your hand, a single seed pod that glows warmer than all the others. "It's not over," she whispers. Then she's gone, darting after her Empress, leaving you standing in a garden of miracles, with a growing sense that the true test is yet to come. The seed pod burns in your palm like a tiny sun as you approach Hagia Sophia, its golden light pulsing in time with your quickening footsteps. The great cathedral looms before you, its massive dome silhouetted against a starless sky, yet something is different. Vines. Thick, twisting tendrils of golden vegetation crawl up the marble walls, their shimmering leaves fluttering in the night breeze. They seem to grow before your eyes, spiraling around columns and snaking across mosaics with impossible speed. You're not the first to arrive. The little girl stands at the base of the cathedral steps, her small hands pressed against the ancient stone. Around her, the other garden children kneel in quiet reverence, their baskets empty. "Too fast," the girl murmurs as you approach. She doesn't turn. "We planted only a little." But the roots. They remember. Here's what later historians would dismiss as legend. Contemporary accounts mention strange vegetation around Hagia Sophia during the plague years, though most attribute it to neglected maintenance. But Theodora's secret garden logs tell a different story. Notes about sacred geometry in cathedral foundations, about resonant frequencies in the dome's curvature that might amplify growth. As you watch, thin golden filaments emerge between the cobblestones, weaving themselves into intricate patterns that glow faintly. The design reminds you of something: Leo's geometric proofs, the spiral inside your seed pod, the growth patterns of. A gasp from the children cuts off your thoughts. The cathedral doors, which normally require a dozen men to move, swing open silently. From within, a deep, resonant hum vibrates through your bones. Not the plants this time, something older. Something awake. The little girl finally turns to you, her eyes reflecting the golden light in uncanny ways. "It's time," she says simply, taking your hand. Together, you step across the threshold into a transformed Hagia Sophia. The air thrums with energy. Above you, the great dome drips with living vines, their tendrils forming a shimmering, ever-changing mosaic. The marble floors pulse with glowing roots that trace the outlines of forgotten symbols. And at the center of it all, a tree. No, not a tree. Something between a plant and a fountain, its golden trunk spiraling upward in perfect Fibonacci sequence, its branches heavy with fruit. No. Books. Small, leather-bound volumes that glow with the same unearthly light, their pages rustling though no wind blows. The little girl releases your hand and approaches the impossible plant. With surprising strength, she plucks one of the books from its branch and presses it into your hands. The cover bears a single word, embossed in living gold: remember. The book pulses in your hands like a living thing. As your fingers trace the embossed word, remember the cover unfurls of its own accord, revealing pages that aren't paper at all, but thin, flexible leaves covered in shimmering script. The little girl watches you with those ancient eyes. "Read," she whispers. "Before the roots forget." You glance down at the first page and nearly drop the book in shock. The words aren't inked. They're growing, tiny golden filaments arranging and rearranging themselves into recognizable letters before your eyes. The text tells a story you know well by now: the Radish cults, the Onion rebels, Theodora's experiments. But there are details here no historian ever recorded. How the first sacred radish sprouted from a crack in a plague victim's grave. How Demetrius' onion garlands were soaked in an antidote he never knew about. How the singing plants didn't just calm minds, they purified water, killed plague bacteria in the air, changed things at levels no 6th century healer could comprehend. Here's the truth archaeologists are still piecing together: Theodora didn't just stumble upon agricultural advances. She was rediscovering something far older. Recently uncovered fragments of pre-Christian texts mention singing gardens that could heal both land and spirit. The Empress, it seems, had tapped into forgotten knowledge. As you turn another page, the leaf pages resisting slightly, like living tissue, new words form, but these aren't about the past. They're instructions. Diagrams of root systems interconnecting beneath the city. Recipes for poultices using plants that won't be discovered for another 1,000 years. And most startling, a map. Not of Constantinople as it was, but as it could be. A city woven through with golden roots, where crops grow in impossible places, where the very air hums with health. The little girl places her small hand over yours. "The roots remember," she repeats. "But people forget. Unless someone reminds them." Outside, the sounds of the waking city begin to filter through shouts, cartwheels, the occasional wail of plague mourners. The ordinary world reasserting itself. The golden vines covering the cathedral walls begin to recede, their light dimming. You look down at the book again, only to watch in dismay as the letters start to unravel, the golden filaments retreating back into the pages like morning dew evaporating in the sun. "No." You cry out, but the girl shakes her head. "Not gone," she says. "Just sleeping." She taps your chest lightly. "In here now." As the last glowing vine withdraws into the cathedral's stones, you're left standing in perfectly ordinary Hagia Sophia, just you, a little girl, and a book whose pages are now blank, but still faintly warm. The distant sound of a funeral procession drifts through the open doors. Theodora's voice, strong and clear, rises above the crowd's murmurs. The girl's head snaps up at the sound. "Time to go," she says, then, with a wistful smile, "plant the last seed well." Before you can respond, she darts out into the morning light, leaving you alone with an impossible memory. And one final, glowing seed still tucked safely in your palm. The final seed burns a hole in your pocket as you emerge from Hagia Sophia into a changed Constantinople. The city still smells of smoke and sickness, but now there's something else: the crisp scent of golden leaves drifting on the breeze. You spot them everywhere, tucked behind merchants' stalls, pressed into children's palms, even floating in the emperor's funeral procession where Theodora walks stone-faced behind her husband's bier. You wander without direction until you find yourself back at the old granary district where it all began. The spot where the first golden plant grew is now bare earth, but the memory of its song still hums in your bones. Kneeling, you dig a small hole with your fingers and drop in the last seed. Nothing happens. Of course nothing happens. What were you expecting? Some magical? A soft chime rings out across the city. Then another. And another. The sound comes from hundreds of tiny golden sprouts pushing up through cracks and crevices all across Constantinople, each one adding its voice to the growing chorus. The seed you planted remains stubbornly dormant, but it doesn't matter. The song has already begun without you. Here's what the history books get wrong: the vegetable wars didn't end with imperial decree or military force. They faded away like a fever dream, replaced by something nobody could explain but everyone remembered. Tax records show a sudden surge in miraculous recoveries that summer. Grain shipments go unclaimed as rooftop gardens flourish. And in one curious entry, the imperial treasurer notes expenses for removal of golden vines from palace walls' third attempt. As the sun sets, you spot the little girl one last time standing atop the old granary wall, her purple sash fluttering in the wind. She doesn't see you. She's too busy conducting the city-wide symphony of plants with sweeping arm motions, her face alight with joy. You turn away smiling. The seed you planted may never sprout in your lifetime. But that's all right. Some miracles take time to grow. The evening air hums softly as you walk away, the golden leaves rustling a lullaby behind you. Constantinople will forget the details, of course. Within a generation, the stories will become legends, then myths, then children's nursery rhymes about the Great Vegetable War. But right now, in this perfect twilight moment, the whole city breathes as one, inhaling hope, exhaling healing, carried on a chorus of roots remembering. The last golden notes fade into the night air, lingering just at the edge of hearing like a half-remembered dream. The great domes of Constantinople darken against the starry sky, their outlines softening as time works its gentle magic on all stories, all memories. Somewhere beneath the modern streets of Istanbul, perhaps a single golden root still sleeps, waiting for the right combination of rain and moonlight and desperate hope to wake it again. Or perhaps not. Some mysteries are best left to the earth. For now, let the image linger in your mind's eye, that perfect moment when an entire city held its breath, when warring factions laid down their onions and radishes, when even emperors and empresses paused to listen to the song beneath their feet. The details may blur with time, but the feeling remains, that quiet certainty that sometimes, against all odds, the world can still surprise us with its resilience, its capacity for healing, its stubborn insistence on growing toward the light. Let that thought carry you now as the story settles into memory, as your breathing slows to match the imagined rustle of golden leaves, as the boundaries between history and dream grow beautifully, peacefully indistinct.